Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another episode of Business Ninjas. This is Kelsey here today with Jay Rudman. He's the CEO at SciStream. Jay, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Kelsey. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So Jay, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm based here in Chicago, Illinois. I'm CEO of a business called SciStream. We're based out of the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina, so the Research Triangle area. Prior to being CEO of SciStream, which actually is a newer endeavor for me, I've had the good fortune of either being founder, co-founder, founding team member, or CEO for a number of different tech businesses. Three of them which sold and successful exits with, and one of them is still operating, but I'm no longer CEO of, and excited to apply my new talents to this new company, SciStream.
That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about SciStream.
Sure. So we're in this interesting new space where it's in the retail industry, kind of clothing, apparel, fashion, etc. And we do 3D body tech. So what that essentially means is that we can take two photos using either an iPad or a mobile phone. And from those two photos, which are a front pose and a side pose, we can gather instantly 240 plus different measures. And from those measures, we can actually do made to measure and ready to wear clothing. The made to measure would be custom and it'd be made within days and not weeks or months. And the ready to wear would basically point to the perfect fit either on the rack if you're in the store, or it would ship something to you if you were doing this at home.
Interesting. Is it a specific type of clothing, or is SciStream really able to handle a lot of different articles of clothing?
Sure, great question. So currently, just like a lot of startups, we have to focus our efforts. We're really focusing on menswear. Okay. Dress shirts is really our bread and butter, but we're also do casual pants and suits and sport coats, etc. So menswear is really where we're focusing right now, but soon thereafter, we'd love to expand our offering.
Yeah, interesting. So, Jay, you talked about, several different kind of adventures and, companies that you've been working with. Have you been able to step into an organization and really elevate those companies? Because it sounds like you've been very successful in scaling companies.
Yes, well, great question. And, interestingly, early in my career, I was the crazy entrepreneur who had the idea, the inventor, and tried to start and scale the businesses. Later in my career, as I hinted at, the last two opportunities have really been where I've stepped in. And so to really speak directly to your question, it's a whole different ballgame when you're stepping into an organization. I have found, and by the way, just to put some time parameters around my time with SciStream, I'm relatively new, so this is only 6 months in. And so I can give you my roadmap over the last 6 months, and I can tell you about some things that are also, in my sights for the future. So the first 3 months of stepping into SciStream was really around climbing the operational learning curve, so understanding the business. Two was really understanding the team and drawing alignment, especially with the senior leaders, because I have a handful of senior leaders who are amazing, have strong institutional knowledge about the business, and understanding where they are and really trying to draw that alignment. And then ultimately, at the end of that first 90 days was what we called basically communicating our strategic alignment, our strategic intent, I should say. Where are we headed as an organization? And that was a big unveiling to the rest of the company. And they were very excited for the clarity behind that announcement. The next 90 days has all been about executing against that strategic intent. And we're really focusing on our go-to-market. Now, everything I've spoken of so far is really about the, operations and the tactical elements of the business. So really the future state and what I'm thinking about next is where does the longer term plan drive us towards? What does that roadmap look like? And how do we build the capabilities in-house to enable us to happen? So thinking about, the 3 year, I think a lot of people use acronyms like like a BHAG, which is big, hairy, audacious goal. Like, what does our 3-year BHAG look like, and how do we actually build? Because we have so much in flight right now, it'd be kind of ludicrous for me to try to change that currently. But I feel like I can get my fingerprints around the business over the next few years to enable us to actually achieve that BHAG.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say differentiates yourself from the competition and, being able to achieve those long-term goals?
As an organization, we basically have capabilities that others don't. We have an entirety of a platform that goes all the way from scan to factory. And what that means is this: yes, we have that 3D bodies tech that actually does the scanning that I alluded to earlier. We also have a lot of the middleware that enables an individual to actually configure their clothing. So you can see it in different, colors and styles and lengths and collars and buttons, and et cetera. And then also, so that's kind of that middleware piece, but also the ultimate, factory to actually manufacture the clothing.
Mhm.
And so because we have all those pieces well aligned, we can basically, from the time that you place an order to the time that it actually ships to you or to the store, there's really very limited manual intervention. And because of that, that's a huge competitive advantage.
Interesting, interesting. And going back to your experience stepping into SciStream,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like they're, giving two pieces of advice I'm taking from this, extracting.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like two of the biggest pieces that you found, and correct me if I'm wrong, were building relationships, assessment, but also two, developing that, intentional strategic intent.
100%. I have found through so many mistakes that I've made in the past, Kelsey, is that you really need to have singular focus as a young organization. It's way too easy to step in somewhere and basically say, okay, we're going to go address 10 things. We're going to place 10 bets on the table. And quite likely, none of those bets are actually going to come to fruition. So
Mhm.
having the singular focus is absolutely critical. But just to say the words is meaningless. What you really need is the team to be aligned behind it. And what
Mhm.
that means is not only, overtly, but also, behind closed doors, because oftentimes they might give lip service, but does that really mean that they're going to drive the business towards that ultimate strategic intent? And so you have to win not only the minds of your team, but also the hearts of your team. And that's what I focus a lot on.
That's really interesting. Talk to me more about how you've been able to work on that alignment because it's clearly so important. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the very beginning is a lot of listening. People want to be heard, especially with a new individual stepping in. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of institutional knowledge. There's a lot of belief systems. There's a lot of interdependencies that you might not be aware of. And there's probably even emotion and, personal dynamics that you might not be aware of. And so
Mhm.
you have to kind of listen to all that and try to synthesize all that information into some cohesive belief.
Mhm.
When people believe that they're being heard and actually not only hearing, but actually acting upon, then their minds start to change a little bit of, oh, this
Mhm.
new individual actually does, care about my thinking and actually can act upon my thinking. So I think
Mhm.
that's the first point. The second point is that, like everywhere, and you probably have heard this a million times, as culture is so incredibly important in or in organizations, but especially for a new individual stepping in, is
Mhm.
really to be cognizant of what the existing culture is. And culture is so many things. It's behavior, it's language, it's, what people are being measured against. It's so many different things, but
Mhm.
really understanding what that culture is and then start to find opportunities for further improvement. A great example at SideStream was, they didn't really have a very strong articulation of their values. And you can, be dismissive of values, but values are so critical to really lay the foundation for how you're going to act both internally and externally
Mhm.
as an organization. They're your guiding principles, they're the guardrails that keep you centered. And so we've spent probably the last 3 months going through what we believe our values are and forming a committee to actually enhance those further, getting a strong commitment from the senior leaders as to what they are, so they feel aligned behind it, and
Mhm.
really revealing and celebrating those with the rest of the organization so they kind of know what they are being held up against.
If you wanted our listeners to know one thing either about SciStream or kind of your leadership style and how you've been able to elevate these companies, what would you say in regards to, both of those things?
Yeah, well, with SciStream is I think we're going to transform the industry. I think it's a broken industry. I don't know how much the listeners will know about the retail industry, but basically you are trying to predict demand probably anywhere from 6 to 12 months in advance. That prediction is often vastly wrong for all sorts of different reasons, be it fashion trends or otherwise.
Mhm.
Also, we've been trained, every single one of us as a consumer, to buy 10 things online and return 8 of them, and that's horrible for the environment. It's a horrible business model. I've heard anecdotally that for every 100 different garments that are created, about a third are sold at retail price, about a third of them are discounted, about a third of them end up in a landfill. And we know that's just not sustainable as a business, and it's not sustainable in an environmental sense. So it is broken, and I really do believe SciStream can transform it. So that's what I want you to know about SciStream. In terms of a tip as a manager or a leader, I do believe, and it's kind of counter to what you hear out there of customers always right. I believe employees are always right. Like, you really have to have an inside out management style where you are listening to your employees, because they're the ones that are actually going to get the work done. They're the ones on the front line. They're the ones that are closest to the customer. And so listening to them and understanding how to greatly leverage their capabilities will enable your business to excel.
hmm Do you believe in that? I've heard it repeated over and over again that, and do you believe with this that employees stay because of good leadership, rather than, poor experience?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the data highly recommend or suggests that basically people stay and leave because of their manager.
Mm-hmm.
I've also heard, the opposite side of that same coin is that people don't run to jobs, they run away from jobs.
Oh.
And so, yeah, I think that for you to be able to retain high quality, talented individuals, you really have to do the following. You have to give them very interesting work, and you
hmm
have to create a winning team atmosphere. And if you can do both of those things, I think people generally will stay.
Yeah, that's really insightful, I think. And I think it's a great tip to give to our listeners as well. Jay, this has been a great conversation. I love talking about like how your strategic intention, and your plan and the values of starting a new company, or stepping in rather, to elevate them, has been so interesting and insightful. And again, your leadership really, is on showcase based on, the data of what you've seen in your own team.
Well, thank you. And this has been great, and always happy to have the conversation.
Jay, thanks for being on Business Ninjas. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.